This is number 5 or number 7, I'm not sure, of my live videos that I'm sharing with you. And welcome, by the way. And today I am working on a custom quilt. I loaded it yesterday and I did a little bit of work yesterday on it and some this morning. And basically, what I'm going to talk about is how I start my custom quilting to get to where I can be able to put the really cool and fun stuff in, like the free motion quilting. But before I do that, I just want to go over just a few supplies that I use when I am doing my long arm quilting, my custom work. And it's very, very simple and very few supplies. So I'll just show you what I use. So, of course, we need some little scissors or nippers or whatever you have to cut the thread tails whenever you stop and you want to go on to another area. This is what I use. Well, this is one of them that I use. I have many different styles. Seam ripper, the dreaded word, seam ripper, but we need it. We've got to use it sometimes. It happens. I used it this morning on this quilt. I ran out of bobbin. And so when you run out of bobbin, you need to back up your stitches a little bit and then, of course, put a new bobbin in and then continue on. So I had to take out some stitches this morning due to that fact. Let's see, what else? Oh, okay, here's a good one. So when I am doing custom quilting, a lot of times, and not always, sometimes on the quilt, I will bury the stitches and sometimes I won't. But I do have, these are, let's see, here we go. These are, I hope it focuses on you. These are your no thread needles. So basically all you have to do is just take your thread and just put it up in there and then pop. It's threaded. It's all threaded. Very, very simple, very fast when burying threads. And again, I don't bury all of them. When I'm stitching in the ditch, which is what I'm doing on this quilt right now, I don't bury them. But if I'm doing a motif and I'm coming around, I might bury the two ends. So it's always handy to have that. Another thing I have is I just crocheted this little basket here, little tiny basket. And it works for me because this is where I put my thread tails and it stays out of the way and I can just, throw this away and start filling it back up because I do create a lot of thread tails when I'm quilting. So on this quilt, I'm using rulers. And so before I show you the rulers, I want to talk about a ruler base. So on your machine, you should put a ruler base on your machine, and I'll show you that here in just a minute. But you should always have a ruler base when using rulers, so your rulers don't rock back and forth, and it can cause havoc. I mean, you could damage your machine, which is something you definitely don't want to do because these machines are not cheap and they're not cheap to repair. So be careful when using rulers. Always have that ruler base on. And sometimes they'll rock on a ruler base. You just have to know and learn how to use them. They're very simple. I use them all the time. This quilt, I'm going to be using lots of rulers. And I'm going to do some free motion on it, and I may even do some computer work on it. I don't know yet. I'm just in the beginning stages of this quilt. So I'm going to turn my camera around. Those are some of the tools that I use. Let me get rid of some of this. I do want to show you something else first. I almost forgot. So I put this together the other day, and I'm going to be stitching in the ditch for you. Now, this quilt here there's a lot of areas that are pressed to one side on this quilt, and this is a huge quilt, by the way. A lot of areas that are pressed to one side, which causes a ditch in the seam, but then in a lot of the areas in this quilt, they're pressed open. So I have to determine which ones are pressed open and which ones are stitched in the ditch. And the way I do that basically is by looking at it, but sometimes it's hard to tell. And so I use this tool right here, my thumbnail, to determine whether it's pressed to one side or pressed open. So very inexpensive tool right here. Okay, so I put this together, and these are pressed to one side. Now, you can tell, I don't know if you can see it or not, but the red is the higher side because the seams are pressed towards the red, which is the darker color of the fabrics. So if I take my thumbnail and just, I don't know if you can hear that little thump. Okay. If I hear that little thump or I feel a little ridge with my thumbnail or my fingernail, I know that that was pressed to one side. If I don't feel that, and I can kind of really get deep into the seam sometimes and look, and you could see the stitches coming together holding the two different fabrics together. There you go. And that is not a ditch, and you don't want to stitch right down the middle of that, because what you're doing is you are going to be stitching on air on top of the stitches that hold the two fabrics together, and you may even take a chance of even breaking one of the stitches with the needle. So if the seams are pressed open, we don't stitch in the ditch. Now, with that said, with the seams pressed open, you can stitch right up next to it, very, very close. And if you're a beginner with using rulers or even a beginner free motion quilter, it's very hard to do. It was hard for me to do it at first, but with practice, I got better and better at it. And I can just stitch on one side, just barely away from the seam. But I like to stitch in the ditch. I think that really enhances the piecing of a quilt, or even applique. Applique to me is considered a ditch. I always stitch around it. I just think it makes everything pop in the quilt. And anything I put in the background or on top of the piecing, is just extra. And I try to make it subtle so it doesn't take away from the piecing. So now I am going to flip the camera over. I hope I don't make you dizzy, so just bear with me here. And let's see. Okay, here we go. I'm flipping it over, and you see that beautiful quilt in the background. And let's get this up here. Okay, I'm going to zoom in. Sorry about that. Okay, so this is the quilt that I'm working on. Every block is different. A lot of piecing in this, a lot of heavy piecing in this, and lots of points, and some of the ditches. There are some ditches, and then there are not some ditches. So anyways, with that said, dear. Okay, so this is it. And this right here, this block right here is huge. And this is the center block. It's got good old Texas in it. Yay, Texas. And then, I haven't stitched this yet, and I'm going to show you how I stitch the flying geese. And now this one here, I only feel that it's pressed to one side right in this area right here. So I'm going to have to be very, very careful coming down to this point when I actually quilt this one. There's very little ditch in this block here. This block here is a flower, and I've already stitched in the ditch on it. Isn't that cool looking? And then now I've got to stitch in the ditch here. And of course, the borders as well. So I want to go back over here. I go back over here. I want to show you my ruler base. So I've got everything clamped. Now, this is my ruler base right here. So I can put my ruler right on here. And see, it's on there. And not worry about it being unbalanced or anything. So that's a ruler base. Here are my straight edge rulers that I use when I'm doing this quilt. In the smaller areas, I use a small ruler here for stitching in the ditch. And for the larger areas, I'll use this one right here. But if you're new to quilting, I would say stick with the smaller ones. You're going to have to probably stop and pivot a lot with the smaller one, but that's okay because eventually you can get to the larger one and stitch with it, and you could even learn how to slide it. Okay, so this, what did I do with those? I have, for this Texas, state of Texas here, I am truly thinking about either stitching straight lines up in the white and straight lines in the red, or I may use this little ruler right here. This is called a wiggle ruler, and it's just wavy, and if I stitch, then it looks like it's kind of waving. So that's what I'm looking at for this area right here. Now in this area over here, I'm not sure what I'm going to do. I am going to stitch around the star and maybe inside of it about 1/4 of an inch, but I don't know what to do in the back yet. I'll figure it out. So that's how I roll. Anyways, so this is what I'm doing. I'm about a little bit more than middle ways in this quilt, and that I'm stabilizing it. So that's how I do custom. I always stabilize the quilt first by stitching in the ditch and around the blocks and sometimes inside blocks, just to connect the 3 layers together, the backing, batting, and top. And then when I get to the bottom, then I stitch it off the leader, and then I'll just start putting in my creative work. So stabilizing the quilt is a really big thing for me. I don't start putting in designs until it is completely stabilized with the 3 layers stitched together by stitching in a ditch. If I have no ditches to stitch in, let's just say it's an all applique quilt, then I stitch around applique just in certain areas just to stabilize it. Or I may even baste a quilt across. But that's the first step I take when I'm doing any kind of custom work. All right, so let me just show you just stitching in the ditch here. So there is no ditch here, so I haven't stitched there yet. I'm going to come back later and handle that. But for right now, there is a ditch here because I can hear that. There's a ditch there. So I'm just going to pull up my bobbin thread, and I'm going to lock in my stitches. Okay, and I'm going to get my ruler, and I'm going to line my ruler right up next to the foot, just nudged right up against the foot. Maybe if I do it this way, it might be better. And then I'm going to watch the ditch, and I'm actually going to turn my light on because let's see how that works. Nope, not that one. All right, I'm going to turn it off. Okay, so I'm going to, let me zoom in here. Ooh, sorry about that. There we go. Okay, so I'm going to stitch in the ditch and just take it slow. It's not a race, so just take your time with it. And it's very hard for me to see with the lights out, but So I'm just creeping along, stitching in the ditch. And if I need to stop and readjust, I'm going to do that. Now I'm going to put it on this side. I could see it better. So just, and again, it doesn't matter if you hold your ruler on the low side of the seam or the high side. It doesn't matter. Whatever is most comfortable for you when you're stitching in the ditch. So I'm just going to come right over to here. And now I've already stitched around this Texas, and I can overstitch here too, or I can cut my lock in my stitches here and then cut my thread. So I'm just gonna creep on over. I like to find the most continuous way to do something when I'm quilting. So I might study the area that I'm working on a little bit before I even start quilting it. Now I continue on over here and get this side stitched. Now we're stitching horizontal, and vertical stitching in the ditch is, once you learn how to do it, it's very, very easy. Again, you want to stay on the low side, and eventually you can get to where horizontally and vertically you don't even need a ruler. But if you're new to this, continue to use your ruler so that you can keep it nice and straight. Okay, so I came to the end there, and there is no ditch here for me to go down, so I'm going to handle that later. Not sure what I'm going to do there yet, but I'll figure it out. I always do. Oh, all right. Lock in my stitches and bring that bobbin thread to the top, and then clip your threads, both your top and bottom. Okay, and now I'm going to show you stitching at an angle. So I'm going to stitch this, and I'm going to start right down here in this corner. Okay, locking in my stitches. There is no ditch here, only on the sides, so I'm going to be very careful here. Lining my ruler up, staying just right on the very edge. All right, so that was straight across, but now we're going at an angle here, so it's very hard to not be able to use a ruler when you're stitching at an angle. So I've got my ruler here. Just creeping up. I am not gripping my machine. I am actually just pushing it with the handlebar. Now I'm going to go over here. That one feels like there's a ditch there. So, lining up my ruler. Now I'm going to go this way, and see, with flying geese you can make these continuous. All the way to the point, and stop and readjust the ruler so you can see how I've already stitched 2 of these up here, so I didn't have enough room. I had to roll before I stitched these other 2. So I'm going to come down and over. And now let's see, we'll stitch down this way. And I'm going to cut my little tail here. And I'm overlapping on the stitches where I just started, and I'm going to back up a little bit, then I'm going to lock in some stitches. I usually like to lock in about 6. All right, pull the bobbin thread up. Now, when you're using the ruler, you don't need to press real hard. You just need to hold it firmly, but don't press, because if you press, then you're going to have a hard time moving the machine because you're pressing so hard on that ruler base, it's preventing the machine to move. So you just have to learn to hold it very lightly. So sometimes when I'm using a ruler, I will hold it like this, but my thumb will be right here, so, up against the ruler on the quilt top, and that kind of keeps it from sliding, but it also, at the same time, I can also pivot my ruler a little bit as I go. So if you practice that, you can even use your pinky sometimes if you need to be able to control the ruler. So when using your machine, I just want you to understand too that I said that I was pushing my machine when I was using the ruler. I was not gripping the handlebars, I was pushing. So you don't need to grip your handlebars, whether you're using rulers or you're doing just free motion. All you need to do is just move it, and actually you should be able to move it with 2 fingers, just like this. You should be able to get to that point. Anytime you grip, sometimes you grip so hard that you're kind of preventing the machine from moving. So really, long arm quilting, when you're first learning, is basically learning how to control the machine. So let me just turn this back around. Bear with me here. Oh, there we are. Okay. All right. Well, I hope you got a lot out of that video. And I'm going to tell you that I just can't say it enough. You're probably going to hear it too much from me. But you have to practice. You have to relax. And don't watch your needle. Watch where you want to go. Those are 3 of the best tips I think that I can give you that helped me years ago. My grandmother taught me how to sew on a sewing machine, and she told me the same thing. And so I have applied that to the long arm quilting, and trust me, it's magic. It works. So practice, relax, don't watch the needle, and I think that's it. So I hope you enjoyed this video, and just practice, practice, practice. Can't get enough of that. So if you liked it, like and subscribe to my YouTube channel. And I do have a website, Jackie's Machine Quilting, also. Check it out. Thank you.